Robots Radio. Games, lore, stories, community. Just press play. This show is brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/Elder Scrolls Lorecast.
Robots Radio presents The Elder Scrolls Lorecast.
Welcome to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, a place where the Elder Scrolls community can come together to discuss the boundaries of our knowledge about the universe of the Elder Scrolls. All right, adventurers, welcome back to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. I am your host, Tom, or Robots, and I am here with my wonderful co-host, Lettuce of Broom. Lettuce.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. Now with more lettuce for bristles in said broom.
Welcome back, Lotus of Doom. How's it going, buddy?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
Good. We're now clearly into the new year. It's a few weeks now.
Yep.
I feel like time's just flying. We're moving through stuff, and we started into the different leaders of Elder Scrolls Online, specifically. We talked about Yoren last week, and this week we're moving on to the current leader of the Daggerfall Covenant, King Emeric, who has a similarly interesting story. It isn't as developed, I would say, as somebody like Yoren, but it's still interesting. And
yes,
there are a number of details that I'm not going to cover because they tie into a lot of the quest lines that you can do in the game where he's involved.
I was going to say, one of the big problems with discussing him is the fact that part of his story in game, which would spoil what you're doing in the Daggerfall Covenant. Well, granted, it's base game, but there's no reason to just overtly spoil things for the sake of spoiling them. Mm-hmm. But some of his character development and history is portrayed in the game, which is a little different than Yoren, where you can just kind of read his background type of thing.
Right. So we're gonna go into a little bit of that, but there's a lot of these other side quests and things that we're not going to hit all of them. It was either like a very specific amount of things or a ton of stuff and kind of go through all the different plot lines. We're going to cover the most important stuff. So if you don't want any spoilers about some of the stuff that happens in the game, you may want to skip, say, the second half of this episode, but you can still listen to the first half. But I think that comes to some of his most important stuff, though, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, it's hard to discuss lore and theory and stories of the series without kind of having them be spoilery. So
right. There's always a little bit of that.
Yeah, it's hard to have a lorecast where you can't discuss spoiler-based stuff. Not that we aim to spoil stuff.
Right. But this is content that's been out for years now. So
this is base game. This
is base game stuff. So yeah, no worries there. Nothing from the most recent expansion. None of the stuff that came out the last year, at least as far as I'm aware. So let's dig into it. With any good ruler, you kind of have to understand how they came to power and who was in power before they arrived. And King Emeric wasn't the kind of leader who just was born into the position. Like, his parents were the previous rulers, and therefore he became the next ruler. It's a little bit different for him. So before King Emeric rose to power, the previous ruler of Wayrest, which is where King Emeric comes from, was King Gardner. And this is, of course, during the Second Era. And we don't know exactly when King Gardner came to power. That hasn't been revealed in the lore yet. But it was sometime before the Second Era 563, because that was the end of his reign. And King Gardner was the last member of the Gardner dynasty, which descended from a merchant prince who was first proclaimed king. And as we know, with a lot of the people from that area, with a lot of Bretons, that they are all merchants, or a lot of them are known for their mercantilism, if that's a word we can use, mercantilism.
I mean,
that's a fancy word.
If you say it with conviction, it's a word.
It's a word. Yeah. And he was known for expanding the city's walls and fortifications and allowing it to survive a 57-day siege by Durkarok's invading hordes back in 541. So Durkarok, that's another name that may not be familiar to you. Durkarok was the Reachman Emperor of Tamriel, or at least Cyrodiil at the time. And if you remember back from a number of episodes, I think we go maybe 2 or 3 months ago, we talked about the Reachmen and the fact that they were actually the rulers. They were on the throne. They were the emperors for a very short period of time. And this ties back to that. So this is when Wayreth's forces were instrumental in defending the Reachmen, or defeating the Reachmen, and in the aftermath, King Gardner joined with several other Breton kingdoms in signing the first Daggerfall Covenant, a pact of mutual defenses. And this is the beginning of that negotiation. Wayreth thrived for many years after, until the king was suddenly felled by the Nahatan flu. And this was one of the flus that killed a lot of people in Tamriel. We've talked about this in the past before, along with his entire family, ending the Gardner dynasty. So basically anybody who could have followed after him was also taken out by the flu.
That's rough. Yeah. That's rough to have your whole family lineage just, that's the end. Just,
yeah.
Although I get the feeling the Nahatan flu did that to a lot of families in the lore.
Yeah, I think, from a story writing standpoint, it's a very nice, like, clean cut way of saying, like, this is where the old stuff ends and this is where the new stuff is. Yeah. But at the same time, it's also a very interesting thing because it really does happen in reality. You look at the lineages of, say, kingdoms and things like that, and some of them were actually destroyed by things like plague or whatever in the real world.
Yeah, for sure.
So he succeeded King Gardner, and he was of the Cumberland dynasty because he was of Cumberland, Emeric of Cumberland. And he would go on to form the Second Daggerfall Covenant, which vied for the Ruby Throne, of course, during the interregnum. So he finished the deals that were being worked out by King Gardner, who had initiated those deals. Any other thoughts on this stuff, Otis?
So not really. I always found, we'll go more into this when we cover the third ruler from the third faction of the Eldmere Dominion next time. But to me, this, how can I put it? The Daggerfall Covenant and King Emeric himself strike me as, we had talked about how Jorund was kind of so atypical of what you would expect in a ruler. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Daggerfall Covenant and King Emeric seem like such this is your medieval style of succession to become a ruler and make political alliances, marriages, all of this stuff for the sole purpose of succeeding in your ambitions to rule.
Right. Being good at military, being good at finances, at trade.
Just commerce in general.
Right.
You've got
treaties,
your military
brokering
might.
things, like all of the aristocracy stuff that you're supposed to be good at and trained to do.
Yes, they strike me, or that this whole thing is spearheaded by Emeric himself. They are, to me, the stereotypical, this is your medieval dynasty coming together to rule a region, which isn't like a bad thing, that just because it's a little more predictable or anything like that. But it's funny that they're almost like the grounding in, here is our Anglo-Saxon style of medieval input into the series.
Right. Are you guys familiar with Western Europe? Here you go.
Yeah. Here you go. This is the Bretons.
Yeah.
And some of his diplomatic credit goes to the fact that the tensions that we had talked about in the Ebonheart Pact are equally, if not, I wouldn't say more so, but certainly at least on equal footing in many situations, between the three races that he does bring together under the banner of the Daggerfall Covenant. Because, man, the orcs just got kicked constantly from all sides.
That's their whole story, right?
Yes.
Everybody picks on the orcs.
Yeah, and the Red Guards are aggressive as hell, and you've got this unified beating of the poor Orsimer, who are a formidable force, but getting these people to all cooperate for a while in a very, very uneasy truce is, I don't know, it's very different than what we discussed last time, but with a couple similarities to their formation as well.
Yeah, it's not an easy task. So I think that just goes to show how qualified somebody like Emeric or even his King Gardner was, in either case, that they were able to broker these things and actually see them through, especially with the fact that they were both known for their military prowess, but they knew not to always rely on military prowess. They knew that sometimes they needed to rely on diplomacy, and that they seem very balanced in those two ways. So let's talk about his rise to power. Of course, he was a member of the Cumberland dynasty. His father's name, Eric Pierrick, he was sure that he was schooled in both economics and military matters. Again, part of that balance. And he served as a lieutenant escorting caravans during the summers. So he was experienced, at least in escorting and military types of command structure, operations, those kinds of things. When he was 20 in the Second Era 541, this kind of recaps a little bit of it, he helped fend off the onslaught of the Reachmen during Durkarok's he helped fend off the onslaught of the Reachman leader Durkarok when the latter began leading attacks against cities in High Rock. Emeric is the one who killed Durkarok outside of Daggerfall. Now, as we know with, of course, these medieval types of structures, being an important person who's already important, who then kills the bad guy, the leader of the faction, is a very good way to win the sway of the people. Right.
That really puts your name on the map for other people to pay attention.
Right. So then, of course, when they need a new leader, they're going, well, what about Emeric? He slayed the bad guy. He's awesome. Right. So that makes sense for him to rise to power in that kind of context. Then in 563, the Nahatn swept through High Rock, killing Gardner and his entire line, like we talked about before, and succession fell to Emeric, who ascended to the throne, beginning the Cumberland dynasty. And when this happened, there was purportedly a halo of gold around the sun on the day of his coronation. Now, is this like popular myth? Is this like, oh, he was a chosen new king of a new line, and so of course there was a halo of sun? Or were the powers that be doing something on that day? Or was this being summoned by some magical force among the powerful to make it look like it was predestined to be a thing? Who's to say, right?
Yeah.
It's either imaginary, the Aedra, someone of the Aedra or somebody did it, right? Or it was actually summoned through magic. Those would probably be my three most likely reasons for thinking that happened. So then he went on to wed Princess Mariah of Sentinel 3 years later, and this greatly angered King Ransar of Shornhelm, who had desired Emeric to marry his daughter, leading to Ransar's war in the last seat of that year. He wielded the Orichalc Scalpel. It's an orc weapon. When Ransar's army came to the gates of Wayrest, and Emeric's forces eventually succeeded in breaking their siege of his city. Again, military prowess, successful in military stuff, proving again that he should be the leader, right? In the aftermath of the war, Emeric helped forge the Greater Daggerfall Covenant, and this is when that was finally forged. Emeric was a strong advocate for an invasion of Cyrodiil in order to restore, get this, the true flame of the Empire of Man. Believing that the empire needs always to be led by mannish races, and so why not a Breton, right?
That's very funny for a number of reasons, but that, granted, yes, the Bretons are a mannish race, but they're known for being,
half
the mix
mannish
between.
Yes.
So that the irony isn't lost on me there, that like, I guess in that situation, it's like, yes, you need to have a mannish race on the throne. Okay, so by doing that, you're saying that actually the perfect solution is a mix of the two, which is okay. That seems the most believable, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's that's some interesting propaganda, almost in the same vein that the Almeria Dominion does with their pushing forward the narrative of, well, no, it's clearly the Elven, line that the Mer should be in charge of everything.
Right, the Mer were in charge. The Mer settled the entire continent. This is our continent. We should be ruling. Yeah.
So it's funny to see that there's actually an alternate take, basically using the exact same logic that was done against them. So,
well, I guess the logic in this one is the empires that they recognize have always been led by mannish races. Right. So therefore, they should continue that lineage. And the elves are going, what about before that?
Right. But that's the thing. It's a unifying factor amongst, the men, the not Mer races. That's a pretty solid unifying factor. It's like, all right, not them, then us. It's like, all right, well, there's your unity. The only thing that is interesting, of course, is the Daggerfall Covenant not involving the Orsimer, which is an interesting wrench in that, where it's just like, all right, so you're still going to be talking down to one of the three groups in your situation.
And notice,
but all right.
And notice that the marriage for the diplomatic marriage that occurs is between a Breton and a Redguard, who are both mannish races. There was no sign of like he debated between marrying the daughter of the Orcish tribe or the Redguard woman. Like there's none of that. It's like, yeah, I'll marry the mannish one. That's fine, but not an orc. Like there's no consideration of that at all.
Yes, and it's funny because everybody, well, all of these factions, and we'll discuss more with the Dominion next time, has at least one kind of like repressed group, and they're kind of brought in, and this is how they get along. And it's funny, the Argonians, the attempts to eliminate slavery were part of it. The orcs really seem like they're just simply there as a matter of proxy and muscle to the scenario.
Yeah.
It seems like they're still on the outs, or at least that's always been my impression from doing it.
Well, culturally, they're very, very different. Like there's differences between the Bretons and the Redguards, right? Like they came from very different places. They have different histories. But there is a certain similarity in that, like, they're all mannish and they have a belief in like similar types of governmental styles.
Right. And
whereas the orcs are very tribal, they're very
tribal.
It's very different.
And if you were, again, not to go out of our way to spoil anything, but the Hrothgar DLC for Orsinium delves a lot into this storyline with King, what's his name? Krogog?
I don't remember. God. Yeah, they're all like Morgok and Korgar. Yeah.
Apologies, I don't know. King Korog. Korog, that's it.
There you go.
I'm almost positive that's
Korog.
it. King
Just
Korog.
add a bunch of cuz, guz, ers, and then eventually you'll get a word. Some O's.
There's your vowels. Yep. Otherwise it'd be Dwemer. No vowels. What do you call it? But like, if you were to do that storyline, you get to see more of the Orsimer side of things. And to exactly that point, a lot of the Orsimer tribes are opposed to the fact that Orsinium is this structured establishment along more of the, medieval style lines that the Bretons and the Redguards use as well. So that's actually a focus of one of the stories. Yeah.
Like they're losing their culture to the other societies around them.
Exactly.
Which is like that's again another real world thing. When in many cases historically, when a smaller, less powerful culture is too in too much proximity to or enveloped by a larger culture, oftentimes that doesn't go. They don't go unchanged. The interesting thing here, though, is that as much as I've studied history, which is a good bit, the same thing does happen to the dominant culture as well. Look at the way English evolved when taken over by the Normans. We went from a very Germanic language to a mixed language, and it never did quite change for either group, or never did quite go back. There's all other concepts in this too. You take America, you take a very Western European style of governments and culture, and then you import a bunch of slaves from Africa, and a few hundred years later, we're still dealing with the issues of that. But you can't say that the dominant culture, the Western European culture, wasn't highly influenced by the less dominant culture of the Africans. Look at our music, look at our culture. All of it is very influenced by both. So it's it works both ways. So interesting stuff. Yeah, jazz is a good representation of that. And for all the difficulties, and we've been going through a lot of these in the last year, there's been a lot of talk about, racial division and things like that, and how everyone needs to come together, which Lotus and I firmly believe that everybody should come together.
Yes.
And so for all of the negative things that come about it through racism, you end up with a lot of positive things as well. You have the combined cultures create things that are beautiful that never would have existed separated, which is really, really cool. Everything from jazz to rock and roll to hip hop to, any of those styles of music would never have been a thing. Dance styles, language, there's a lot that we never would have gotten. So anyway, interesting points. Why don't we move into the middle of the show, and then we'll come back with some interesting stuff about the later part of his reign, or at least the more current part of his reign, and then some other little tidbits toward the end here.
The skies are marked with numberless sparks, each a fire, and every one a sign.
So this is the part of the show where we get to thank our patrons. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for helping to support the show. You are immensely appreciated. Very, very, very much so. Especially, and this is the part where I get to call out our tier 5 or higher patrons, Noodle Al Dente, who is still a tier 5 patron. Thank you so much for that. Anybody who subscribes at a tier 4 or higher level will get to join us at the end of the month. And reminder, the end of the month patron episode will be in 2 weeks on the 28th. 9 p.m. Eastern on 28th at our regular recording time. Our recording time is now officially shifted to 9. I need to update the graphic on the screen to 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Lotus's schedule has changed, so we're able to do it a little bit earlier again.
I can show up a little earlier now, which is nice because I don't need to be up so late.
Right. So if you'd like to join us, there's still room for you to either upgrade your current patron status or sign up as a tier 4 patron. And if you'd like to help support the show in other ways, you can even sign up at lower tiers and get no ads, or help to just word of mouth is huge. And you know what, Ludus, we've gone up and down in like the 200 to 300 to 400 range over the last few months. And if we can get up above 500 and stay there for a few months, then we will hit my crazy goal that I set when starting this to get an Elder Scrolls tattoo.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I don't know exactly what I
thought about that entirely.
Yeah,
I remember you said that.
I brought it up a while ago. Yeah, this is
that was a while ago.
It can't just peak for 1 month and go down, because sometimes somebody will just like subscribe at like with a god tier.
Sure. I actually had forgotten that you had mentioned that way back in the day.
Yeah, I figured I should bring that up again because it's kind of a fun goal to share with. So if you guys can help me get to that would be amazing. I'll have like a Fallout one maybe on one shoulder and like a Elder Scrolls one on the other, and you guys can help pick out what goes on it. I don't know, maybe a dragon or something awesome, right?
Nice. So you don't have it planned. It will be.
I don't have a plan.
Yeah. So it'll just be designed if that ends up becoming a thing. That's kind of funny.
Yeah. Neat. Talos axe, something badass. I want something like really, really cool. So if you can either help contribute to that or just even come up with concepts, that would be amazing. So that's what we got going on. Check out patreon.com/Elder Scrolls Lorecast for more info about that stuff. And let's move on with the rest of our show. Are you interested in starting a podcast, but you don't know how to get started? Are you concerned that your podcast just isn't reaching the audience that you're trying to reach? Well, this is Robots from the Robots Radio Network, and I have a podcast for you. It is the Podcast Creator's Guide. You can check it out here at robotsradio.net on any podcatcher and listen every week for quick tips and updates for how to get you started and growing your podcast even faster. Check it out today. The Podcaster's Creator's Guide.
Yes, you're entirely brilliant. Conquering madness and all that. Blah, 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 blah.
No, Crystal. I will not have a tattoo of Nazim on my arm.
Why not? He can be holding a sweet roll.
Nazim with a sweet roll. Everybody's favorite character from Skyrim on my arm, right there. So let's get into this. So a little bit more information about King Emeric. In 582, he was abducted by Magus General Septima Tharn. Tharn, right? We've talked about the Tharn family of the Imperial Legion, for whom he had once nursed an unrequited attraction. Dun, dun, dun. She took him. I've been listening to the Mechanist raps, and every one of them end with dun, dun, dun. So that's not stuck in my head.
Perfect. Somebody have shifty eyes real quick.
Yeah, right. She took him to a famed Redguard crypt, the Hall of Heroes, which her scouts had rediscovered in the fallen wastes of Bankarai. There, she slew King Emeric. So not only was her love unrequited, but she kills the guy. Dead. And then she was... let me finish this up, and then we'll get to some impressions on this. And then she was able to physically follow his soul to the far shores. A soldier of the Daggerfall Covenant was able to follow and slay Tharn in turn. As a reward for his heroic deed, get this, Tuwaka allowed the soldier and King Emeric to return to life in Mundus. And if Tuwaka is not a familiar name to you, it is because Tuwaka is not one of the standard Aedras or Daedras that we usually talk about. Tuwaka is actually a Redguard deity, a Redguard god who represents the conveyance of souls to the afterlife. And just real quick, Tuwaka is the tricky god of the Yakutan god of souls. Of course, Redguards came from Yakuta. Yakutan god of souls and god of the far shores. Before the creation of the world, he was the god of nobody really cares. Which is
my favorite
awesome.
title.
I love that. When Tal Papa, they all have great names, undertook the creation of the Walkabout, Tuwaka found a purpose. He became the caretaker of the far shores and continues to help Redguards find their way into the afterlife. So Tuwaka must have believed that Emeric and the soldier were not ready to be dead and brought them back. Now, the soldier didn't die. They just went to the far shores. But Emeric died and was resurrected. Talk about... Let's talk about like medieval Western religion or myth. A king who dies and is resurrected, and Emeric represents that right here. Like, we've got kind of a Jesus thing going on a little bit.
A little bit.
Not exactly, but the whole, this kind of stuff happens in literature a lot, right? The death and resurrection of a prime character. So. Yeah. Yeah, so super interesting, and Tuwaka wasn't even his god. Like,
I know. So that's what I find most fascinating about all of this, because if I guess this is a world where praying to gods, or at least Daedra, gets you a response,
right?
Which isn't, uncommon. It's more uncommon to have the Aedra actually do anything for you. But if I am resurrected or I am given a gift by a god that I don't acknowledge really, because one would not assume that as a Breton he's praying to Tuwaka or anything like that. If he returns me to life, I am like pretty on board with like, okay, I chose incorrectly and I need to go with that.
I need to change my beliefs here. This is now my god of choice. Yes.
Yeah, because he's reaching entirely out of his own pantheon into like, okay, we're going to save this Brett. And it's like, well, that settles that. I mean, this guy's clearly like amazing because he just gave me a second chance at this. So
what's also interesting about this is that King Emeric is killed and his soul dies and goes to Tuwaka's realm. It doesn't go to Aetherius, right? It doesn't. There's not like a direct movement to Aetherius. The assumption here is that this must be some sort of stopgap point in Oblivion before souls move on to Aetherius, and that also raises the question of like, is Tuwaka the same as Arkay or Xarxes, who seem to be that same role, the the god who ferries the souls of the dead on to where they're going. And this is actually brought up in a book I discovered in researching this, called Tuwaka, Arkay, and Xarxes by Lady Cinnabar of Tanith, a discussion of the similarities of gods. And there's a passage at the very end that talks about Tuwaka. It defines Arkay and Xarxes. These are Manish and Murish gods of, moving people onto the dead. They're very similar, but different in very specific ways. And then it talks about Tuwaka, and where it shows the pronunciation here as Tuarka, and says, which brings us inevitably to the Yukudan deity Tuwaka. How long he has worshipped in that name, he was worshipped in that name by the human tribes of Yukud is now unknowable, as all our race's records were lost in the cataclysm that sank the archipelago. But as even old Phrastus had the wits to note, it cannot be a coincidence that Tuwaka performs the same functions for the Red Guards that Arkay and Xarxes do for the Tamrielic men and Mur. Are these gods really separate and distinct deities, or are they all aspects of the same deity, worshiper under different names in different cultures? Which leads me to ask the question, if they are in fact actually the same deity who can represent themselves in different guises for the different cultures that they interact with, why did Tuwaka / Arkay / Xarxes not show himself as Arkay and Tuwaka instead? And was it because they were trying, or he was trying to give Emeric a sense of importance and legitimacy for the Red Guard people? Do you follow the logic there?
Yeah, no, I was going to say almost like, here is physical proof that like we matter more than maybe you were giving us credit or something like that.
Right. Like, you married into this line of Red Guard royalty. Your wife is a Red Guard. But don't just see them as different people who have different beliefs that you're just kind of going to put up with. Like, sure, their beliefs are just as legit as yours because I freaking brought you back from the dead.
Yeah. That I could see that as a potential reasoning behind something like that. Because, again, it seems strange that someone that obviously, I mean, unless they just never mention it, and he had been praying to the Yukudan gods this whole time, which seems unlikely. Yeah. There seems like there would be a deeper reasoning behind that just happening, other than, hey, what the hell? I'll just grab you. You seem fine. You were doing some good things. I'll just pull you back for no reason. Like that. That's a very good point.
Or I'm looking out for my people. I believe that this pairing of these two groups is good for my people. I would like your descendant, who is mixed with the Red Guard people, to remain in power. Therefore, I'm going to keep you alive. Something along those lines, either making them seem more legitimate or helping to forward their agenda by, again, making the Red Guards more legitimate in this treaties that they've I don't know what is it? What's the word? But two groups come together and they work together. Words fall out of my brain. So I found this other passage. Alliance. In an alliance. Daggerfall in this covenant. So
you don't have.
I could just use the word covenant, couldn't I?
You could use the word covenant. It's weird.
Imagine that. So
we're in an alliance war, and we're talking about the covenant. It's almost like all the words are just right there, and we're not grabbing them.
I know, right? Imagine that. So in the. I look over a few different wikis when I put this stuff together, and usually if I quote stuff, I pull it from the UESP. But this passage right here, I thought did a really good job summing up his legacy. And this comes from the fandom site. And it says here, the history surrounding Emeric of Cumberland after the Second Era 582 is unknown. Thus, like the time after the game, we don't really have a story for how his line ends. But he paved the way for a new era of prosperity for the Kingdom of Wayrest. Emeric was the first in line for the Cumberland dynasty that ruled over Wayrest. Considering Emeric's age, he had likely passed away a few years since he was killed in Bankerai, with his son of likely Breton Redguard descent assuming the throne of Wayrest and likely the Daggerfall Covenant. Eventually, the Cumberland dynasty was killed off for reasons unknown, being replaced by the Horley dynasty, who would then be replaced by a line from the Septim dynasty, beginning with Magnus Septim. By the time the Tiber Wars had occurred, Emeric's Daggerfall Covenant was over, likely through internal strife, since the Second Orsinium was sacked by then, and both High Rock and Hammerfell had little to no relation with each other. While Emeric's legacy of the Covenant had failed to an extent, his legacy in Wayrest would last forever. So he did his best to bring the people together and unite around these things, but as history would have it, eventually things fall apart and the groups become bitter again and separate, which, that's kind of the way things go sometimes.
Yep. Yeah. It wasn't destined to be in this situation.
Nope, wasn't destined to be. But it's kind of interesting to think that these kinds of things do happen. And again, this makes me think of things that happened historically. For example, most of us know about the French king. Man, I should have written this down earlier, but it just occurred to me now, so I didn't have time to write it down early. The French king in, what was it, the 800s? What was his name? He basically united what was left of Europe after the fall of Rome. French first
Napoleon?
king. No, Napoleon was like 200 years ago.
I was going to say that was actually much later. Never mind. Scratch that.
It's not Louis. It's I'm not going to remember it right now.
I'm trash with history.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to say names and exact dates, not my strong points. So I was like,
right. It was before France was a thing, but there was a king from that area who came to power and was the first king to unite a lot of the people in the post-Roman era. And also, although he was illiterate, he was able to start schooling. He basically created schools and created education, actually brought people together, kind of united people. And then after he died, passed things on to his son. And then, of course, everything dissolved back into these like feudal states again. Charlemagne, that's it.
There you go.
So King Charlemagne, believe this was the 8th century, maybe. I'm just
going to grab that name for quite a while.
This name just pulled this out of my butt, but and I didn't research this ahead of time because it just occurred to me that this is very similar to that. You have a fractured area with lots of different groups and people who are leading these different groups, and they don't get along and they don't unite. And then you have somebody who comes and unites them and creates a better situation for everybody. And then they go on, pass away, everything eventually falls apart again. And it was almost like they weren't there. Although they did have an impact for the rest of time, it wasn't a lasting situation that was created. So people in Normandy, Crystal says, people in Normandy share a Norse descent after France surrendered the area to the Vikings. Yeah. So anyway, fun stuff, fun history things. And I might be getting some of that wrong, but it did just occur to me that is kind of similar in some ways. Any other thoughts on this, Lotus?
No, it's just it's the only thing that I do find interesting about their side, which I'm not going to lie, until you finished up there at the very end with the legacy section, I actually kind of forgot that. I mean, they don't directly have the time frame, as it seems like, it did dissolve as they devolved back into that, but like they seemed almost like they had a more conclusive end to their covenant, whereas the Ebonheart Pact, not so much. The Dominion, we'll get into that next time, but there's kind of like up in the air about how all of this comes about. And I know it's supposed to be ambiguous because, you're the hero in your story and there's 3 factions. So, it's like, oh, nobody really wants to be the loser.
Right.
And pick the wrong side. But we know that in the end, none of these factions are still around. Well,
right.
To a degree, there's modified versions of them, but like none of them in and of themselves exist the way that they were in this game. And with EP, or the Ebonheart Pact, it's kind of ambiguous, more so. Like, did they go back to that? Slavery actually kind of isn't so much a thing, but it is in certain regions. So obviously that doesn't get completely removed. There's still the tensions between all the races over there. With the Daggerfall Covenant, it seems pretty conclusive that they just like, oh yeah, they devolve back into just this like beforehand. They say, I mean, maybe I'm taking this too literally, but it seems like they directly lose. Like you can easily point to the fact that they just don't win this 3-banner war, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, I guess. I kind of didn't remember that they had a little bit more of a conclusive end to their lineage. But you know, like I said, they all kind of end. It's just,
well, it's only so many years before Tiber Septim rises to power and basically stomps everybody, right? And if you're going to be of Nordic or Imperial background, you're going to claim him for yourself, and everyone else is going to have to say, yeah, Tiber Septim kicked our butts. I mean, that's kind of what happens at the end of the era.
Right. So when it comes to the Pact, it's kind of like, since their main goal wasn't to rule, whereas the other two factions were to rule. I've always liked the fact that it's like, well, obviously we know what happens further down the timeline with Tiber Septim, and he just comes in and raffle stomps everybody.
Right.
I can still be on the winning side because, hey, once we completed what we were doing with the Ebonheart Pact, we just kind of drifted apart because that was the goal. Whereas the other two alliances, that's not their goal. It is to literally rule, which we know does not happen. So maybe that's, we didn't talk about it last time, but maybe that's why I feel like more of an attachment to the Ebonheart Pact, because I guess with the fourth wall breaking knowledge of knowing where the series goes, I like my faction not having a conclusive defeat in their in their history, so to speak. Yeah,
I guess I could see that.
Yeah.
Like, there's a little part of you that's just like, yeah, there's more of a chance that they actually win because I don't know they lose.
Right. Yes, exactly. The process of elimination the opposing way. It's like, well, you can't prove we lost. So by default, I think that I won.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, this is again another cool character, and as they usually do with any of these characters, they're pretty well fleshed out. You know, you meet him in the game, so you know what he's like personally, but you get a sense of like, okay, military, like he's a formidable guy. It makes sense that he was the leader. You know, like he was good at military stuff. He was good at financial stuff. He was good at diplomacy. Like he was probably the right leader for the right time. And he happened to be the guy who killed the emperor, who was, you know, previously in charge. So good job. Good on him.
Good work.
So, all right. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. I think next week we're going to tackle the last of the remaining leaders who, again, words are dropping out. What's her name?
Queen Ayrenn.
Words are not coming to my head today.
Probably the most contentious of them.
Yes.
So that people either love her or, well, actually, it doesn't. A lot of people don't seem to have an issue with her necessarily so much as her alliance, myself included, where I despise the Elmeri Dominion. Queen Ayrenn's whatever, that's fine. She means well, and her backstory is very cool. So I'll be excited to talk about that next time.
Yeah, it should be a good episode. Well, cool, man. You got anything else going on before we head out?
No, not really. Just streaming on Twitch when I get the chance. I will be starting, actually, I guess the only thing of note, speaking of Dominion-based things, I would like to shout out my community and all of the little groups who chimed in for this. I will be starting Battlespire possibly this weekend if I can carve out a chunk of time so that I can do what I can to see if there's any reference points that we can use for upcoming lorecasts with the coming year of the Gates of Oblivion. I put up a poll in which I left it to the community to tell me what race I would play.
I voted.
I appreciate it. Many people did. And despite my co-host from Tales of Tamriel, both of them, in fact, touting that people should vote Altmer to make my life crap, Dunmer won. And I get to play a Dunmer in the new game. That's cool. Which is very cool.
I voted Redguard. I wanted to see you play a Redguard through it.
I would have been. I don't know what the stats are from game to game because they do change the racial bonuses and negatives to each game. But I will say that Redguard is one of my favorites to play because it just coincides with a lot of their strengths relate to running in like an axe wielding maniac, which is how I like.
They tend to be more melee focused, and
yes, not sure what the strengths and weaknesses of Dunmers will be, so I'll be curious how that works specifically in this game. And in this situation, I will be making a Dunmer and starting up my adventures in an Elder Scroll Legend Battlespire, which is, I've heard, very challenging, and clunky is a word and adjective that's getting thrown at me a lot from people who have any experience in it. So
I believe it.
Stay tuned. Hopefully I get some neat insights that we can use to decipher some of the upcoming stuff in the coming year for ESO.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Good luck with all of that. I think that's awesome.
Appreciate it.
Also, thank you for the raid. You were streaming before this, and some people jumped in during the live stream. And again, reminder, come join us for the live show. We have a lot of fun chatting with you guys while doing the show. And thank you to anybody who's here from Lotus's stream. If this is your first time, I would love for you to follow the channel. Come join us again on a future episode. We love having you guys here. I am doing my shows regularly. Things are pretty normal for me. I've been streaming during the day every day since a Monday a week ago, when I work on my stuff, editing down my contents, creating videos, doing those kinds of things. And it's just kind of nice to have people to chat with. So if you're looking for like a work buddy that you want to just chat with while I work and you work or whatever, or you just want to hang out, follow the channel, turn on notifications. I usually come online between about 10:30 and noon. And then I'll be on for at least a few hours usually. And then sometimes after that, I play games. And, you're welcome to hang out in the afternoons or in the mornings if I don't have any work to do. And, play games with me or just watch. Love to have you here. So that's what I've got going on. Well, Lotus, thanks for being here again. This was super fun.
For sure.
And everybody,
looking forward to next week.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And have a good week. And until next week, try not to die so you don't have to get resurrected by a foreign god. Because I hear it's not particularly dependable. Maybe King Emeric's the only one I've ever heard that working for. So, don't do that. We'll see you guys later.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. If you have something you'd like to contribute to the show, please reach out to us at elderscrollslorecast@gmail.com or on Twitter @ESO Lorecast. I really appreciate you listening, and I'd love to hear from you soon.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.
Have you ever wondered how deep the Elder Scrolls lore rabbit hole goes? Have you got a grasp of the basics and want to find out more about the universe? Written in Uncertainty is here to help you. We'll be mixing in philosophy, theology, and whatever other theory is useful with Elder Scrolls texts to untangle some of the biggest questions in the series, like what are dragon breaks, how does Chim work, where did the Dwemer go, and more. Check us out at writteninuncertainty.com or find Written in Uncertainty on any podcatcher. Thanks for listening, and catch you later in the Grey Maybe of Tamriel.
In a world where solid-state electronics and vacuum tubes are still meta, people never stopped loving atomic-powered everything. A chosen 500 stepped inside a subterranean vault to be spared the nuclear horror of the inevitable Great War. 25 years later, they emerge after the fallout settles to retake Appalachia. Among them, two former rivals whose blood feud will tear West Virginia apart in their epic struggle for survival. Chad, a vault bro who has a strength of 15, an intelligence of 2, and is a complete wasteland dickhead. Simon, a complicated anti-hero who chooses light and hope, but accidentally becomes a cannibal, and wakes up naked and afraid with a Scorchbeast queen after a date goes terribly wrong. What? I mean, it's a wild wasteland, right? This dark humor radio drama will have you driving off the road and crawling out from under the fallout. 2 men. 1 wasteland, and so many nukes. Chad, a Fallout 76 podcast, rated R, now streaming on your holotape player podcasty thing.
Once upon a time, 27 years after the bombs fell, there were two people, a vault dweller and a California girl. They met, and sparks flew. That's when things got interesting. Once Upon a Wasteland is their story. Follow Elizabeth Kirby and Odessa Valdez as they pursue their happily ever after in the post-apocalyptic Appalachian wasteland of Fallout 76. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and many other podcasting platforms. Once Upon a Wasteland, a Fallout 76 love story, available now.